Here we have a Peavey KB2 keyboard amp. I was asked to see if I could fix it. The symptoms are, if you turn it on, now this time I got power, but it'll cut out and you got to bang it in order to get it to come back on again. And whenever I go to fix something, I initially run through my head what it could possibly be, and I'm inevitably wrong every time. But I'm gonna let's just throw something out there. I'm going to say my prediction is that it is the rectifier from heating and cooling, and the fact that it's soldered with, this is 2003, 2005. That's probably soldered with lead-free solder, that the solder joints failed on the rectifier. That's just for fun. That's just for fun. We'll see. We'll see if I'm right for once, and if so, it'll be on video. I went to take it apart, and somebody else had been screwing around with it, literally screwing the screws. This one here is cross-threaded, can't get it out. The nut on the other end just spins. So I'm going to break out the Dremel tool and cut that one off before I can get the amplifier out. And talking to the guy, he also said that because of this issue, he tried spraying WD-40 into the jacks. I can't for the life of me figure out what the purpose of that would be, but that's possibly another issue that's going to need to be addressed inside this amplifier. I'll tell you, when you go to fix stuff, this is why I really don't like fixing things too much anymore, is because the bigger problems are the previous person who tried to fix it. So let me cut that screw off, get this thing out, and let's have a look at it. Seems more mechanical than electrical, and I'm hoping that it'll be a quick fix and that this screw will be the most difficult part of the whole repair. I had to cut that screw off in order to get the amplifier removed from the cabinet. And down here there's a little black square. That is the rectifier, and that's what I was suspecting was the problem. And that thing's in there solid, so that is not the problem. Now let me flip the unit around and zoom out so you can get a better view of where I did find a problem. All right. Here's that screw that was cross-threaded that I had to cut off. Look at that. Look at that. And he got it almost out the other side. That, my friends, takes strength and determination to cross-thread it that much. Now here's a bird eye view of the innards. And a quick rundown for those of you who wouldn't be familiar. Got a transformer here, steps it down from 120 volts down to, schematic doesn't say, so I'm just going to guess maybe 15, 18 volts AC. Then that AC power goes into this rectifier that I thought might have been the problem. That converts it to DC. Long story short, it goes then into these two capacitors to clean up the voltage a little bit, remove what's called ripple. Then coming off of there is, if I remember right, 20 volts, and that 20 volt rail, there's a 20 volt negative, 20 volt positive. That powers the higher power things like your output transistors. Then from there, it goes into these two components, and those are your voltage regulators for 15 volts. Now, I did find a problem with this one right here. And that problem code is referred to as DDD, DD, D, DDD. And what do those letters stand for? They stand for Yeah, I could pull that thing out like a bad tooth. Why did it happen? Well, number one, I would say because of having the lead-free solder, which is, lead-free solder is not as flexible. Lead-free solder does not like heating and cooling. Lead-free solder does not like vibration and movements. So all those above led to the failure of that. And number two, which I am perplexed about, this heat sink here is fully supported and exclusively supported by the leads of that transistor. I believe that heat sink should be sitting down on the PC board. So I feel that this is probably a common failure in this amp. Instead of having a generic heat sink with a hole drilled in the middle, the hole should be up a bit higher. So I'm going to correct that. I'm going to build a bridge from here to the capacitor, which is secure, and in order to hold that in place. And I think I will do the same thing from the PC board up to the heatsink, and I will do the same thing here. The silicone I'll be using is GE Silicone 2. That is perfectly safe for using on electronics. I think they changed the name on it. It may now be called Supreme Silicone, but it's the same as Silicone 2. If it smells like vinegar, has acetic acid in it, that's the one you don't want to use. That one would be corrosive, so keep that in mind. And I am perplexed about one other thing. Now, when I took this off, yeah, it was it had WD-40 sprayed in it, and it had a heavy residue in there. I'm going to have to clean all that off. But why didn't spraying WD-40 into those jacks fix this problem? Right? I mean, you know, my guess it would have fixed it, right? So let's move on. Let's flip this over. You got screw here, screw here, screw here, screw, screw. Undo those. You got screws going through your power output transistors into the heat sink. Don't touch them. Two nuts down here holding the heat sink to the board. Don't touch them. There are screws on the underside of the chassis that go into this heat sink. You will undo those, and you're going to unplug this ribbon cable. This ribbon cable you will leave alone. That's soldered in. That does not unplug, and we're going to leave these be, except for I found it easier to unplug the ground wire over the side. That leaves us with enough play that we're going to be able to flip this upside down and do the work that we need to do. Now, let's see if I can give you a good shot of this here. See that? And you can see the base of all the solder joints are all broken up. Fortunately, it looks as though that it's all solder that's broken and none of the traces are damaged. Alright, voltage regulator. Throw a little bit of flux on there, hopefully make life a little easier. Actually, it's not a whole lot of solder on there for me to suck out. And in those cases, a lot of times what you have to do is you have to add solder and suck it out. So let's see. I seem to be getting it. It's my cheapy solder sucker. Doesn't cost much. It's kind of slow, but gets the job done. Right, and so I'm probably going to have to, I don't want to force it. Alright, to get the rest, ouch, son of a bitch. Get the rest of the solder out of there. I use the wick. Not always my favorite, but I'm hanging up on this here. Does not want to let go, and I do want to get these, there we go. I do want to get those traces cleaned up on this one. On the other one, I'm going to simply desolder it and resolder it with new leaded solder. Just that this one here, with all the movement going on, and hopefully I didn't make matters worse, I just want to inspect it and make sure that these traces are all good. Because unlike 1980s Peaveys, so not as robust as the old ones that I usually work on. Excuse me, I'm trying to work with the camera in the way. Okay. Should be good, so let me give that an inspection, and then we'll get the transistor back in place. Okay, so if you can see this here, I did not like how little actual area, solder area, there was on the solder pad for the leads of the transistor to hold it in place. It was just thin little ring around there. So I extended it by scraping some of the green masking off of the copper trace so that when I solder, I'll have a much larger solder contact to secure that. So let me do that now. There was another issue that took place when I unplugged the speaker wire from the PC board. One of the pins came right out along with the plug. And so obviously, I mean, that's another indication of a problem with the solder. And let me flip that over and we'll have a look at it from the underside. If you look at these 3 pins here, you can see that this one is already breaking loose also. Not a whole lot of solder there to hold that in. And once again, it's lead-free solder, so there's no flexibility there, and it's brittle. Why would this happen? Besides being lead-free solder, like I've been complaining about, I think it's also the fact that the connection never got heated hot enough. I mean, this pin is fairly large. It'll act as a heat sink. And so this never quite gets hot enough for the solder to adhere to it. And when it doesn't get hot enough for the solder to adhere to it, that is referred to as a cold solder joint. Or as we call it in Philadelphia, a cold solder jawn. So let me get that jawn fixed also, and we'll be back up and running. Okay, I want to clean this off a bit, so I'm going to put some flux on there. Melt that down a bit, then use my soldering wick to remove off. And then I'm going to do it to all 3 of them, but I'm going to do it one at a time because I'm trying to keep the pins aligned real well there. Okay, applied some flux to the joint. Yeah, we'll do it a little more since it's been trouble. Get this thing nice and hot. Clean off its tip first. Son of a bitch. Okay, so that's soldered in place now. And just as a note, notice I didn't show you me soldering it because in the end, as soon as you heated that up, it fell right out. It snaps in tight, but as soon as it had heat on it, it would fall out. So I had to sit from the underside with this pointy tool. There's a little hole in the end of the pin, pushed it up through there to hold it in place, and then I just had to load the tip of the soldering iron with solder and then work it onto there and get that connection good and hot so that I knew that it was a solid solder joint. Have them soldered back in place, and they were trouble. They kept falling out, of course, but also it was just a matter of getting them lined up. So now I'm going to clean the joint up, clean the joint up, and make sure everything's good. Alright, so that looks... Okay, speaker terminal. That joint is fixed. I just finished soldering the second transistor, which here's the first one down here that was loose. This is the one that I preemptively took care of. And I would desolder with the solder sucker and resolder with the new solder each pin individually, so that way it didn't desolder all of them and have it break loose on me. That's just the easier way to do it. And now we are not over. We are not over with this at all. Because as a preemptive strike, since the speaker terminals had broken loose already, what I'm going to do is I'm going to resolder anything that experiences heat. So that means all the leads of the output transistors right here and here. This one has, I think it's 9, that one's 6 leads on it. I will also do the capacitor, any of the Molex connectors like here, because it's similar to the speaker terminals, these spade lug connectors, these output resistors or power resistors, as well as the rectifier down there. I'm going to resolder all of those with leaded solder. And these 2 power 1/4 watt resistors down here, I'm going to do both of those. Alright, I'm all finished reflowing the solder joints on this board. So I did most everything over here. Once again, it's anything that experiences heat, anything that experiences stress. I reflowed with the leaded solder to make it stronger and to ensure that we have a solid connection. Then also over here, I did the output transistors, did them there. And there's also a few spots over in here that just had so little solder on them. They were probably fine, but I'm in here. I reflowed those also. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this board back, get it back together. I'm going to hook it up to the speaker, power it up, and make sure everything is functioning normally before moving on to the preamp board and the cleaning the WD-40 off of the input strip there. So let me take care of that and I'll be right back with you. The power supply and power amp board tests out perfect now. Tested it out with the guitar, and this thing actually sounds really nice with the guitar. Of course, it doesn't have any built-in reverb. So realistically, this job is done. Anything else is just added. I'm just going to be doing for the long-term benefit, longevity of this amplifier. Of course, I still have to secure the original problem so the problem doesn't return again. That's those 2 heat sinks on the output transistors. I'm sorry, not the output transistors, the voltage regulators. But I believe if I do that and I do what I want to do over in here, this amp has a good 20 years trouble-free ahead of it. And what I'm going to do, of course, as I mentioned, just got to clean this board out. So to take that board off, I have to do every single jack here and those 2 screws and those 2 screws, and then this thing will come right out. It's on a ribbon cable. The ribbon cable's probably soldered in, As far as I can see, I almost guarantee that, so that means it'll have to remain attached to the preamp board. And to do the preamp, remove the preamp board, it's actually held in by all of the potentiometers. So it's going to be a matter of, there's no set screws, so I'm just going to pull these knobs off and then undo the nut that's underneath them. And then after that, this board will pop right off. Let me see. Yes, there are no screws holding that in. So let me do that now. I'll get that all disassembled, and then I will show you what I plan on doing as preemptive measures. In case you're wondering, best way to get knobs off that don't have the set screw is a automotive body panel removal tool. Just get under there, lift right up, nice and easy. If you're afraid of marring any kind of a finish, just put a piece of masking tape or duct tape on that underside of it. But this makes life a whole lot easier. Preamp board is removed, and the only reason that I removed it is so I can access the control pots while I have this disassembled. I never actually got to test this unit out because obviously it was a power issue. So I am just going to go ahead, since it's this is a 2002, I think I saw the date on the board. So since it's about 20 years old, I'm going to spray cleaner in all of the pots, get them cleaned up. Excellent product for doing that, at least for any pots from the 80s going forward, maybe back into the 70s. If you got some vintage equipment, I would recommend you don't use this on the pots because it's so strong. The older pots aren't made as well. It can just dissolve the interior resistive trace that's in the pot. But otherwise, this one's really safe. But it's also very expensive. You know, this can is like 18 bucks, and I picked it up 3 years ago. Don't know how much it is now. So first what I do is I spray with just regular contact cleaner, cheap stuff. You get this at Lowe's, Home Depot. I think the big can is like $6. Spray it in there, turn the knob back and forth a number of times, spray it again to flush it out. Then after I've done that to all the pots and they dried a little bit, I will spray the deoxit in there and then turn them also. Deoxit leaves, this leaves no residue. Deoxit will leave a residue that will protect these pots for, I think they say 10 years. But excellent product. I have Peavey amps that would not make a sound. They would just give an ear-shattering crackle if you touched one of the pots. Clean the pots with that method, boom. It's like a brand new amp. So let me do that now. I'm going to do that first before going on to the next step. And I'll be right back. And when you are spraying into that hole there. Gotta be careful that I don't go scratching anything in there. This metal cover here is just that. It's just a cover. This big hollow space in there. This piece of melamine, formica, or whatever material they use for circuit boards, that's what carries the trace, and then the knob hooks onto some wipers that wipe across it. So everything that we're looking to clean is on this board here. So when you spray in there, you want to get it in there and get it soaked really good, and then we'll turn the knob, spray it again, like I said. I've seen people spray it on the back. Deoxit even makes a thing that you screw onto the shaft, and it'll force the deoxit down between the shaft and the collar there, which can work. It's the easy way to do it because you don't have to take anything apart. but I bet you it just wastes an awful lot of deoxit in the process. So get it where you need it the first time, and that is right through that hole there. So I'm done with this for the night. I'm going to let it dry overnight because this is flammable solvents that I've been working with. And then tomorrow I'm going to work on the opposite side of the board. Now I'm into the final step of what I want to do with this amplifier. And basically this is optional, probably not necessary. But because it has the lead-free solder, I want to reinforce all of the legs of the potentiometers down here, for the simple fact that these potentiometers are the only thing that supports this board. Positive thing about it is that there are a lot of them and they are spread across the board. Typically when you run into this problem, you will have them mounted on the end of the board facing this way, like my Peavey Special 130 or the Bandit 65. That's how it is. They're facing forward, so the potentiometers support the front of the board, and then there's screws on the back of the board, and they can be prone to the solder joints failing. So it's common to reflow those. I really don't think that's a problem here, but since I'm in here, I'm going to do it anyway. And also for the sake of you guys, the viewer, maybe you're having additional problems with the amp, and this is something you'll want to look at. Maybe you have one channel that's cutting it in and out, and that would be the place that I would look. Now, as far as reflowing these, on the other board, the power amp board, I actually used my solder sucker and drew the solder out of the joint and then resoldered them. I'm not going to do that this time. I am going to reflow them just as they are, but it's important that you do it right. Now, there's going to be people who are going to chime in and say, that's completely wrong to do it that way. You're making a worse solder joint. I disagree, and everything I've ever heard would disagree with that also. It won't be as good as a 100% 60-40 solder joint. But it won't be as bad as a 100% lead-free solder joint either. So we're going to be in the middle, but you have to do it correct. Number one is you're going to want to use some flux on the joint before you heat it up. And you'll notice with the flux on there that the solder will melt quicker and better. And then do not rely simply on the flux that's in the solder, the rosin core solder itself. If you're using rosin core solder, most of the times you will be. That is not enough. So you got to use a tube of flux on there. And number two is you got to make sure you keep the tip of the iron on there long enough to melt the lead-free solder. Lead-free solder has a higher melting point than the 60-40 solder. They both have tin in them, but the lead-free is depends on the alloy, whatever they used. But you want to get it hot enough so that both solders are completely flowing freely, and that'll allow them to mix together, and then you'll have a good solder joint. You shouldn't have any trouble whatsoever. And it should be better than what was originally there. So chime in if you like. If you disagree with me, I'll just delete your comment. So let me do that now. I'm not going to bother. Yeah, I'll video one for you. This flux does not easily surrender itself through that syringe. So you put some flux on there. Now, if I look like I'm going a little cumbersome here, I am, because I have a camera right in front of my face, and I will be looking at the camera and not at what I'm doing. So clean the tip of your soldering iron, and what I like to do is I like to Wait until I see that, oh man, that solder flow. Add it in there. I think count to 3, and then you're done. And you should wind up with a nice, shiny, clean solder joint. And let me tell you, that was quite difficult to do via the camera and not via in person. So I think that looks like a very healthy solder joint. So let me do that to all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 33, no, 44 solder joints, and then I'll be putting this all back together. I'm all finished with resoldering, and I forgot to mention that I also resoldered or reflowed all the solder joints for all these horrible plastic, I hate these things, input jacks, and also for the headphone jack, which is still attached to the amplifier board. For the simple reason that this board is completely supported by these jacks, so you run the risk of inserting the plugs, etc., putting stress onto the joint. So beef them up, and the lead is, as I had mentioned before, more flexible than the lead-free solder, so this should be good. Pretty much at the finish line at this point. As you can see, doesn't look pretty, but it'll do the job. Is I put the silicone, like I had mentioned, securing this heat sink over to this capacitor. These capacitors are already anchored down with the classic Peavey hot glue. I also put some down in the bottom corners of the heat sinks, and basically that should be enough once it hardens to secure these so that they don't sit there and vibrate like tuning forks, and that's what caused them to fail. I also put some deoxit onto various connectors. The speaker connector, sprayed some deoxit on there. The connectors over in here. I also sprayed some, I didn't take it apart, but I sprayed some, move it a little farther, onto the grounding plug. So the deoxit will soak into there and keep that from having a grounding issue. One other thing I did discover, and you should always check on everything. Oh, also, you notice that there's blue on the screws. I put some thread locker, exterior thread locker on there. You can use just about anything, model paint, nail polish. But this capacitor here, nothing wrong with it, but it's just not sitting flat down onto the board when they soldered it in. So I am going to put some silicone down on the base of it to secure it into place so that it too does not vibrate like a tuning fork and wind up breaking the leads there. A little bit down in here. And this silicone goes up to temperatures, tolerates temperatures up to 400 degrees if you're wondering. So solder melts, around 320, 360. So we're pretty safe in that department for temperature. These heat sinks don't get that hot. Okay, we're ready to put this thing back together. Everything's back together. I'm going to test it out with my 80s era Casio keyboard that hasn't been taken out of the box for ages. So let's see if I can still play the way I used to. Let's see. All right, this repair is complete. There's a few cosmetic things I'm going to do. Take the grill off, get 20 years of dust out of inside there. Of course, I still have to replace that screw. And just wipe down the outside, then I'll be handing it back to its owner. I sincerely believe with everything that I did with this amp that it will be trouble-free for the next 20 years. So if you like this video, if you found it helpful, maybe you have the same problem on your amp and it helped you get it fixed, please like, share, and above all, please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.